I'm Chris.
And I'm Chris.
And this is
Mike Fight. Let's get it on.
And this is episode 5. Today we're going to be talking about Cuomo and the controversy of the nursing homes. So, the death of the nursing homes. So this one's going to be a little bit near and dear to us because we both reside in the state of New York. And let me just tell you, there was a big bombshell that happened that came out just last week, a couple of days ago, where let's step back a little bit. I want to set the tone on this one,
and just warn people this is going to be a touchy subject, given the fact that there are people out there who are directly affected 100% in on the whole coronavirus, and then people like me that understand it's there, it's real, it's serious, but I believe it is greatly over-exaggerated and used as a scare tactic to keep control. So
let's paint the picture here with Cuomo. So Governor Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo, great governor, state of New York, who went out on his got a book tour, right? Did a book tour. He won an Emmy, by the way. He won an Emmy.
Oh,
right.
I was going to bring that up later on, but we'll circle back.
Yeah, we'll definitely circle back because it's important here. But the controversy happened just last week, or the end of last week, where the New York State Attorney General came out and said that, those deaths that happened in the nursing homes, Governor Cuomo, your administration didn't really count properly. Your total deaths you missed by, you undercut by about 50%.
Yeah, small percentage, right?
50%. So before this bombshell of a report came out, I think the total was definitely over 6,000 deaths in the nursing homes in the state of New York. It was over 6,000. Some reports have it at 66. Some have it at 6,700. But this report comes out, and the Attorney General says, that number is off by at least or as much as 50%, which means there's potentially close to 13,000 deaths total of people that were living in nursing homes or long-term care facilities that have died as a direct result of the coronavirus based upon a March 2020 executive order from the state of New York under Governor Cuomo that directed nursing homes or long-term care facilities to accept back positive COVID patients, right? So,
well, let me read it.
Go right ahead.
So, because just to give you an idea of when this all started, the country was shut down March 20th, I believe, right? Was the first day.
March 16th is when New York State shut everything down.
Okay, so New York State shut down.
That was leg day.
March 16th.
I remember that.
The last day you can do squats in a gym for a while.
Basically.
So the executive order was written and released March 25th. So it was a little over a week after.
Right. So a week and a half.
All right. And it's public knowledge. You can look up the actual order because there are people out there who still defend this clown and refuse the idea that Cuomo, our fearless leader and such a caring governor that we have, was capable of doing something like this. But reading directly from the actual order, it states that during the global health emergency, all nursing homes must comply with the expedited receipt of residents returning from hospitals back to their nursing homes. Residents are deemed appropriate for return upon a determination by the hospital physician or designee that the resident is medically stable to return. Okay? Now, that was specifically written in there. Was it actually abided by? No.
But medically stable doesn't mean anything. They could still be they could still have test positive for COVID and be medically stable.
Yeah, but what the hospitals were more concerned about was capacity. They didn't want their hospitals being flooded. So
absolutely, that's what the whole thing was. It was to make sure. Again, it may have had good intentions, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. In this case, death was a result.
Yeah.
You don't want to overwhelm the hospital system because they don't have enough beds. Okay, fine. But what didn't he do? He didn't, quote unquote, follow the science. We follow the science.
Right.
What does the science say? 65 and older are highly susceptible. 65 and older, you have comorbidities, diabetes, blood pressure, lung disease, emphysema, any of that type of thing.
Right.
You're even higher of the chances of getting this and suffering.
Yeah, but just follow even just common sense, because the argument that they make to counter
we live
that.
In New York, we don't have any of that.
That's true. Common sense is very hard to come by these days.
We don't have that in our leadership. There's no more. No, it's common sense. Come on now. You ask way too much of people here in leadership.
Well, as technology gets smarter and we become more advanced as a society, common sense seems to be decreasing with that. But the whole thing was that they argue that it was too early to tell what the effects of COVID was going to be.
Nonsense.
This is where the nonsense is. Regardless of what you knew about COVID at the time, you're still talking about a vulnerable population, elderly people who on a yearly basis are the most susceptible to everything.
Anything.
I mean, you name it, they're susceptible.
Anything.
What is every medical commercial you ever watch about sicknesses, flus, colds, medications? What do they always say about the elderly population? That they're the most vulnerable because of their decreased efficiency of their immune system.
The immune system.
That's, again, common sense. If you have a bunch of elderly people that are testing positive for COVID in a hospital, and the hospital staff says, yeah, well, we don't want to flood the hospital with residents from nursing homes, so we're going to send them back to their nursing homes so that we can keep the hospital beds open. What do you think was going to happen to the rest of the patients that live in a nursing home?
All you needed was one.
Exactly.
All you needed was one.
And that's exactly what happened. Now, when they try to put the blame on the hospital, saying, well, the hospitals are the ones that sent them back because they deemed them medically stable, this is where he puts this in there that completely shreds that whole argument. No resident shall be denied readmission or admission to the nursing home solely based on a confirmed or suspected diagnosis of COVID-19.
Boom.
Okay? So right there, he puts it
Boom.
That they are not allowed to say no. So regardless if they tested positive or not, a hospital can deem them, medically stable to return, or not medically stable to return, but the patient wants to go back to his nursing home, and the nursing home can say, yeah, sorry, we can't accept you. No, they were deemed not allowed to reject them.
That's verbatim from the order. Not allowed to reject them, even if they may test positive for COVID-19. That right there, to me, that is the nail in the coffin. But no. It's not my fault. Cuomo says, no, it's not my fault. It's, the nursing homes. They weren't adequately prepared, or they didn't have enough safety measures put in place. It's the hospital's fault. They sent them back when knowing that they were not necessarily tested properly or possibly contaminated with the virus. Oh, no. Here's the best one. It's Trump's fault.
Yeah, well,
he gave us no guidance. He was a free-for-all in his decision. Oh, let me look at it no guidance. No guidance? This is your state. This is your state.
Trump specifically said he agreed with the executive orders, but he had specific rules that he was to have them be guided by, which was, you can send them back to the nursing home. However, you have to send them to a separate ward that is blocked off from the other residents that haven't been infected, and the nursing homes had to be medically prepared to treat these people that were being returned to.
And that's why Cuomo also blamed the nursing homes.
Exactly. But you blame Trump because there was no guidance? No, there was guidance. You just didn't fucking listen to it because you think you're high and mighty and you were too busy complaining about Trump being mean to you, which, I mean, that's the big bombshell that came out of the latest, quotes from Cuomo. Trump was too mean. He was too mean. So how could Cuomo possibly come up with a plan to treat these people or guide these nursing homes in what to do during this pandemic when he's too busy sitting in the corner crying about Trump tweeting against him?
He yelled at me.
I mean, these are the people that are in charge. These are the people that are running our government.
The orange man yelled at me.
It's absolutely pathetic.
Not only that, he because of all this, he goes out there every single day and has a press conference. Now, I actually watched some of these press conferences.
Yeah, unfortunately, I did too.
Because I had to, first of all, running a business in which I'm actually sending personnel into hospitals. I myself made deliveries into hospitals at the height of this pandemic. I want to now see what's going on. What is my state leadership telling us and telling everyone to do? What is the rules? How everything is going? I actually have to pay attention to what this lunatic is actually talking about it sometimes. And he goes and wins a freaking Emmy.
For his press conferences.
For the press conferences.
For his press conferences.
He wins an Emmy. How? What?
And the best part is, what was the timing of that Emmy?
I don't know, actually. I don't even know. What do you mean by that? Talk to me. Elaborate.
Okay, so his Emmy came down November, right? November of 2020, I believe.
Yeah.
Right after his book drops.
Right? Oh, on leadership, by the way.
Right, on leadership, which is exactly what he's winning the Emmy for. It's how to provide leadership during his press conferences. Right, November 20th, which coincidentally, November was when the commission that was assembled to look into his nursing home executive orders was supposed to conclude their findings and report back what they found.
I think it was actually a little bit before November. It was definitely before the election.
Well, June is when the commission, his own commission, came back.
Right, and said he had nothing.
Then a second commission was convened.
Correct.
Which they were supposed to have something by October, and they pushed it back to November. I think it was the 10th of November. Again, don't quote me on that. Look that up. But it was definitely a couple days after the election was supposed to be over. Conveniently, after the election. Okay?
Wink, wink.
Right. And did we hear anything back? No. Then an announcement comes that he's winning an Emmy for this garbage. And then here we are a month later, and this report comes down. And now what are we finding out?
Yeah. Underreported. Now, here's the thing. So, underreported on the numbers. Now, if I read this correctly, what they didn't do, right? What they didn't do was they didn't record the number of people that were sent back to the nursing homes that wound up going back to the hospitals and dying at the hospitals. They didn't record those deaths as nursing home deaths.
Right. It's semantics. That's why.
Because this is his answer. If you died at a nursing home, it's a nursing home death. You died at a hospital, it's a hospital death.
Yeah, that's not how it works.
And then that's exactly how they do it.
Yeah.
It's all dependent on where you die. You die over here, you died over that. You die over here because you died over that. That's that's how you do these things.
Right. Except that it goes back to the source. So what was the source of the sickness? It was because you sent infected people back to these nursing homes who then infected other people who then had to be removed to the hospitals where they died. Now, tell me if I'm wrong here. A hospital would be better equipped to treat a COVID patient than a nursing home patient, right? Okay. So if someone who tested positive for COVID had to go to the hospital and then died in the hospital, do you think that he had a better shot to live if he stayed in the nursing home? Absolutely not.
No.
Because they're not
No.
trained to treat that. They are not a hospital.
That's not their job.
Exactly. So regardless of where they died, it goes back to the nursing home. That is where they were infected because of your executive order. And they went to a hospital for treatment because that is the best place to treat somebody who is sick.
But I got a book that came out. I got a book that tells you exactly how to handle and lead one of the most populous states of this great nation of the United States of America on how to actually get through this pandemic. You know, I wrote a book on it. I did it in 3 months, too. I did it in 3 months, writing this book on how to do this, and on top of it, holding my daily press conferences every day on how to direct. Don't you remember I showed people how to wear the mask? I was showing people, is over your nose is wearing the mask. Under your nose is not wearing the mask. I showed you how to do that, okay?
Oh, and don't forget those signs on the highways, New York tough. We're in this together. Wear your mask. Mask up. All these stupid taglines that they probably paid people thousands of dollars to sit in a fucking room and come up with, rather than actually coming up with a plan to deal with this. No, we're going to come up with cheesy taglines and stupid, corny commercials that we're going to push out to people, and that's what we're going to waste our money and time on, rather than actually coming up with a plan to deal with this.
We're going to follow the science. We're going to follow the science. So you know what the science says? We're going to shut down everything. We're going to stop this. We're going to fight. We're going to win this battle by shutting everything down. No more contact. So we're not going to see anybody. We're not going to touch anybody. We're not going to do anything with anybody. And then watch. We're going to get rid of this. It's just going to go away.
Yeah. All you did was prolong it. That's all you did.
Was destroy the freaking New York State economy. All right? That's what you did. Now, I'm not sitting here saying I know exactly what to do. I'm not saying that.
We're not experts in this shit.
I'm not saying that he actually did a wrong thing by shutting everything down. What he did wrong was shutting everything down for the prolonged period of time, at which point we knew that lockdowns were not working. They don't work. What did they do? They brought everything down, which is fine. But to get rid of the virus, that isn't the intent there.
No.
That's not what you do. The virus is here. All right? It's here. Viruses just don't disappear. Okay? Listen, polio is still around. That's still around. We don't see it anymore because we got advanced medicine that has taken it away, and we have advanced technologies that have helped us fight against it. But polio isn't gone, okay? It just doesn't disappear. If it's here, it's here. And we know that it spreads very fast. That these are things that came out of the China reports right in the very beginning of this damn thing. So if you were following the freaking science, you would understand all that. You would know how quickly and how bad it hurts the 65 and older crowd. You would have never put that language into the executive order, or at least you would have made sure that the nursing homes and long-term care facilities had the equipment or had the means to care properly, to protect those before they went in or went back.
Yeah, well, the science that they were looking at were debunked tests and trials. That's what they were looking at. Because if you remember, the original reports that they were citing to back up their whole draconian way of going about shutting everything down were actually a month or two later debunked. The reports were retracted and actually removed, completely removed.
And I hate to say it this way, but I'm going to say it. Just like a Democrat, to take a failed policy and to drive it even further home to say, you know what, we're either not doing it best, we're not doing it good enough, we just got to give it more time to work. Horse shit. If it doesn't work, stop.
Right.
Do something else.
Right. It's insanity, right? It's doing the same thing over and over again.
Expecting a different outcome.
Exactly. And then when this outcome happened again, right, because everyone was saying there's going to be a second wave. There's going to be. Why did they keep driving home the fact that there was going to be a second wave? Again, these are doctors. These are professionals. They know a hell of a lot more than I do. But when they go on TV, parading around in front of the camera on different networks on behalf of the government, you know that maybe 25% of what they're saying is actual science, and the rest of it is just saying what the administration needs them to say in order to, push their agenda, basically. Whatever they want to do.
Exactly
if they want to shut down the fucking economy, then you have to tell people whatever you need to tell them to scare them into believing that we need to shut down the economy so that the majority of the population gets on board with it. All right? But it goes back to common sense. These are doctors, okay? Regardless of what kind of sickness it is, whatever virus it is, whether it's COVID, whether it's the flu, whether it's pneumonia, the fucking common cold, the most vulnerable population has and always will be the elderly population. The WHO was lying their asses off to everybody in the beginning. The Chinese government lying their asses off, manipulating their own statistics and reporting. Okay, so
the numbers they did the same thing Cuomo pulled.
Right,
they underreported on the numbers
again. But that's what we're relying on. No, how about you rely on your own understanding of how viruses work and who the most vulnerable population is. Start from there, because the best way to get rid of a virus is to have the youngest, healthiest population get infected with it at a what do you call it?
And build up immunity.
At a majority rate, right? The majority of the younger population to get it, beat it, get that immunity, and be done with it. That's how you get rid of these viruses. You build up the herd immunity. And when enough people get it and get infected by it, beat it, build up that immunity, it actually protects the elderly population because it diminishes the strength of this virus. By shutting everything down and forcing 3-year-olds to wear masks and having 17-year-old kids run around like lunatics wearing masks and sanitizing their entire bodies every time somebody breathes in their direction, what you're doing is you are allowing this virus to stick around. You're not allowing people to fight it and build this immunity. You hid everybody from the world, and then when you finally decided after months to try and open up the economy again and people were finally going outside and trying to get back to normal, what happened? This second wave that they were threatening us with months before it ever happened, because they knew it was going to happen, because that's
what the science says.
Exactly. It's science that they know it. If you're going to hide everybody away from this, then when you finally bring everybody back out into the world, it's just going to start infecting everybody again. Like you said, it doesn't just go away on its own.
It's here. It is now something that the world will have to live with. Again, like I mentioned, polio is still around, okay? You know what it reminded me of? Herd immunity. What's the biggest... This is a great example. And I don't know if you were put into this when you were younger. I know I certainly wasn't. But there is a thing called the chicken pox parties, right? Yeah. So chicken pox parties where mothers and family members, if there was a group of friends and one kid got the chicken pox, they would have these chicken pox parties where they would actually bring all the kids to a house and let them play, even with the kid that was sick. Right?
Well, now you get arrested for that.
Well, you can't do that with COVID, right?
Yeah.
But that's what they would do. Why? Because then the thing is that you would hope that your kid gets infected, isn't too detrimental, right? But then has built up immunity, and the thought process was, now they've gotten sick, that's it. They're not going to get it anymore.
Right.
Right? Now that's what I remember as that's like a perfect example of like herd immunity in a sense, right? Now on this, I don't necessarily think that's the proper way. But,
no.
But what you want to do is you don't want the body to be completely absent or away from germs or away from infections, right? That's not what you want. The body is meant to build and fight against these things. Every single day you go outside, your body is fighting some type of pathogen that comes in contact with it. You inhale, you breathe in something, you eat something, right? Your body is fighting something constantly every single day. This is no different, right? It is a virus. It comes in. Now, it is a particular type of virus. It is a very active virus in which it can spread very, very easily, okay? Which is not uncommon with viruses.
No, it
really
doesn't
isn't.
make it any more deadly. It just means it spreads faster.
It
That's
spreads
it.
much, much faster. Now, accordingly to the CDC numbers, I'm not pulling these numbers out of my ass. Accordingly to the CDC numbers, this virus has a 99.8% survival rate, okay? You drop that down, you go into the 65 and older, it actually has a 99.4% or somewhere in there. So these are not numbers that I'm making up. I'm sorry.
I think it was 94%.
94%
for people above 65. Yeah.
So even still, 94%. Okay, so 99.8 for overall, 94 if you're in that highly susceptible category. Am I afraid? Maybe not, right? Of a 99% survival rate. Is it something that we should shut down everything for? I don't see the reasoning for keeping a lockdown for 4 months with a percentage survival rate of 99%.
Well, you know what they say? I don't want to get my grandmother sick, or I don't want to get my mother and father sick. That was the whole thing.
That is the common phrase.
Right. So the people were saying, well, if I get infected or I might be a carrier and not know it, and I get my parents sick. Yeah, and I understand that. And my parents are in that age range. I don't want them getting sick either. But you don't shut down a country for that. Again, it's common sense. So how do you start off protecting people? You don't shut down the whole economy. You don't shut down the country. You allow the younger generation keep going to work. All right? Keep going to school. Do what you normally do. Play in the dirt. Stay outside. Hang out. Be a normal person. And yeah, some of you are going to get it. Some of you are going to be sick. Some of you are going to be sick for a couple of days. Some of you are going to be sick for a week. It all depends. But the majority of you are going to beat it. You're going to build an immunity to it, which, by the way, would be a hell of a lot stronger than any vaccine that they're going to give you. And you carry on with your everyday life. Those who are susceptible to it, if your parents are in that age range, your grandparents, you keep them separated. Okay? You protect them. So if your parents are living in a nursing home, you keep them in a nursing home. Don't visit them for a little while. You know? Wear your mask around them if that's what you want to do.
Right.
All right? That's how you keep them protected. Grocery shop for them. Run their errands. But the majority of the population should be going out there and living their normal life.
I think it comes down to personal responsibility. So let's say I were governor, okay? I may have done this shutdown for political pressure, right? That may have been it. You know, we do the shutdown for a month or so or something. We close things down just to kind of see where everything's at. But in that time, if I was politically pressured to do so because everybody else was doing it, and it would have been politically bad for me to do so, because even DeSantis did it down in Florida.
Well, Ron DeSantis is a perfect example of how it works out.
Right. So he definitely did it down there. And when the evidence started coming back that, you know, it isn't necessarily going to work, or we got to get everything going again, because I think he opened up Florida realizing that there's more detriment to keeping things shut down than anything else.
And Florida has a higher population of elderly people.
Definitely. So if I was running the state, I would have said, listen, we've shut it down. We have to start bringing things back. Here are guidelines for businesses on how you should operate. Again, should operate.
Right.
I'm in a government position. Those are private ownership businesses. I have no real super authority on them on how to regulate how they should run their business, right? But here are guidelines, and this is based on how to decrease the spread, personal responsibility. If you want to require a mask in your establishment, that is your prerogative. If you don't want to require a mask in your establishment, that's your prerogative as well. People that do business in your establishment, if they don't like your policy, then they don't shop there.
Exactly.
Right? It puts the responsibility on the business owner. It puts the responsibility on the customer. Okay? What do you want to do? Do you feel comfortable going out and shopping with or without a mask? Then you make that decision.
Right.
Does the owner of the business feel comfortable maybe closing a few tables if they're a restaurant, maybe, closing a few bar stools if they're a bar, and requiring masks as you walk in or out? That's up to the business, right? We now know, and the things with schools, right? Let's go into the school, because the numbers on the schools are very
insane.
They're amazing.
Insane.
The schools, we now know at this point in time, the percentage of spread in schools is like 1.5%.
Yeah. But we don't even just know that now. There were studies out there from dozens of other countries that never closed the schools. They never closed their schools down. Dozens of reports that they did on large groups of children, not just a sample size of 100 kids. We tested 100. No, thousands of kids that came back over the summer that said the spread from child to adult, adult to child, was so minimal that you might as well call it zero.
Right.
There were studies of that.
So we now,
but we ignored it because
right.
we have our own science that we want to tote so that we can
our own agenda.
Exactly.
So we knew that on the schools, right? I think I heard maybe last week or a week ago about the bars or the restaurants, because the restaurants are the hardest ones hit. I mean, just completely devastated at this point. A lot of restaurants are closing or have not, if not already closed.
Yeah.
The rate of spread in them,
combined? I think it was less than 3%.
I think it was like 2.4%.
Yeah, combined, restaurants and bars.
2.4%.
When they tracked the source of the virus.
Right, the tracing or something. Right.
They found that it was less than 3%, and yet we turned around and said, yeah, based on that science, we're going to reduce indoor seating back down. No, we're going to close it completely. That's what Cuomo did. Shut it down completely. And, we'll allow you to build these outdoor structures that are completely enclosed with heaters in them that don't have proper ventilation. You could go sit in there. That's okay. But God forbid you sit inside the restaurant. You're going to kill everybody. You're going to kill everybody.
For anyone listening, again, I'm just going to take apart what my counterpart here just said. You can't go inside the building, but I'm going to put an enclosed tent outside in the front of my restaurant with heaters, seating. That will be acceptable. But going inside the building, unacceptable. Enclosed outside, inside the building. So enclosed outside, acceptable. Inside the building, not acceptable.
Right, where a lot of these businesses even, they invested money in putting in ultraviolet lighting, updating their ventilation systems to put in better ventilation, to help clean the air in these restaurants.
Better filters.
Right, they put up, plexiglass dividers. They spend so much money retrofitting their places of business to combat everything that they were saying was a problem in these places.
Right, to make their customers feel safer.
Right.
We did this as business owners. Why? Because we felt that it was in our best interest of us and our customers to be on the safer end, to be on the safer side, right? They took that responsibility the way it should be.
Right.
But now they've got an oligarch telling them no.
Right.
No.
And
you can't do that.
And why are we listening to Cuomo? Why do people support him? If you know about this executive order existing, and you now know there's about 42,000 people, right, dead related to COVID in New York. Now you know that upwards of 13, 14, maybe even 15, 16,000 of those people are from nursing homes. Okay? And you still want to listen to this guy. You still want to give this guy an Emmy. You want to promote his book. You're begging this guy to run for fucking president, for God's sakes. This is the guy you want in charge. You hated Trump and everything he did. You hate Ron DeSantis for how he ran his state of Florida. And yet you tout New York as the center, right? The epicenter of how we should run a state, a country, a crisis. And yet you know these numbers and you still want to fucking follow this guy around?
He lied.
Really?
He lied. His own report about that he had investigated on himself. He had himself investigated by himself.
Right, by himself.
He lied.
And he found no wrongdoing in his executive orders. And when they commissioned the new commission...
He brushed it off. Again.
Right. What was his quote about it? So people are going to die. Right? People are going to die. That's the way it is. When that was being said by people who didn't agree with what he was doing in the beginning, everybody went nuts.
Ballistic.
You don't give a shit about anybody else. Ballistic. You're trying to kill everybody. You're so insensitive. Right. That was what people were screaming about to guys like me that was saying that. And yet here he is. Oh, well, people are going to die, right?
When they have those comorbidities, they just they're going to die easier. They're going to die easier. Remember I showed you how to wear the mask.
I know. I did what I was supposed to do. I showed you how to wear the mask. Now the rest is on you. The rest is on you.
I told you got to do it.
I mean, this is the hypocrisy of this clown. The hospitals were never overwhelmed. Okay, there was a few times during the initial months, April in particular, where hospitals came close to being at capacity.
Yeah, but what happened to the Javits Center?
Right, but we retrofitted the Javits Center with 30,000 beds. They used 100. We brought in the USS Comfort, which had, 100 beds?
Yeah, something like that.
Right? And he used 20, I think. 20 beds
All I know is that they were never utilized to the way they should have been.
Never.
There was that structure built in Stony Brook.
There was one in Central Park that they built.
What happened?
Never used them.
Nothing.
Never used them.
Nothing.
If you were so concerned about hospital capacity and you had these other structures and medical facilities being brought in and built, and you don't utilize them, then how the hell are we supposed to trust you when you tell us, the hospital's overwhelmed, we're running out of PPE?
Do you know why they couldn't use them? The restrictions, the criteria to get someone into those structures was so much so than what was required to get them into the hospital that they whoever would allow them in would get in trouble because they didn't tick off the 19 different things that the individual needed to have in order to go into them.
Well, how about this? Because this just goes back to the genius behind Cuomo's dysfunctional brain. Is when the USS Comfort was brought in, he deemed that ship to be used strictly for people who did not have COVID.
Who did not have COVID.
Right.
And what did he do?
Why does that make sense? Right? So you're trying to isolate people who have COVID from the rest of the population, and you're afraid of overwhelming the hospitals. Well, what's the best way to do that? You take
the people that are infected.
Right. You take a ship
and you separate
that
them.
is isolated and a Javits Center that was strictly built for this, and you put the COVID patients there. Now they're isolated. They can be focused on, specifically treated, hopefully, beat it, get released, and that's that. And you keep the hospitals free for other people who have other medical issues. Because remember, we forgot about those people too. We forgot about the people that had cancer or had,
cardiac diseases. Things that need
elective surgeries.
Right. Everything that needs constant follow-up. You need to be monitored. These things were put by the wayside. There's actual data to support that these problems or these modalities, cold modalities, built up to an exorbitant rate that were untreated.
Right. Where people passed away or got even worse because they were either not allowed into these facilities or they were so scared to go. There was instances where I would go to a job where it was a medical emergency, or not even an emergency, but just a medical episode where the people were either too afraid to go to the hospital or were being talked out of it by family members saying, nah, don't go, because if you go, you're going to get infected, and then you're going to either die or you're going to get something worse. And they're like, all right, fine, I'll just stay home and just get worse. Right? When you had the ability to isolate people to specific locations that were retrofitted for it, and you could have kept hospitals open.
Yeah, but I wrote a book on this.
Yeah,
I wrote a book on how to lead people to this.
It's actually genius because now you can take the executive order, you can take the Emmy nomination and whatever speech was written about Cuomo there, you can take his book that he wrote on this, and you can read all that and then figure out what not to do next time there's a crisis like this.
I wonder if there's. I haven't read the book, so I can't tell if there is. But usually, when anyone who's actually read a book on leadership, if you've ever read one, there's usually a chapter in which you have to take responsibility. So, one thing that should be done, and I don't think it will happen, because he hasn't done so thus far, but you never know. One can hope that he takes responsibility for his actions. One thing on leadership, or even on any type of action, when you make a mistake, you own up to it.
Right.
You own up to the mistake. Now, mistakes can be small. Mistakes can be large. This is a large mistake. It was a lapse in judgment. I'm going easy on him. It was a lapse in judgment. But, which is the one part that is unacceptable, is that he is not owning up to the mistake. You gotta, if you are a leader of anything and you make a mistake, you own up to it. I'm sorry. It was a lapse in judgment. Fine. If he was to do that, I would have more respect for him. Now, what happens when you make a mistake and you own up to it? You have to face the consequences.
Right.
The consequences are he is no longer politically allowed or should be allowed to run anything in the state of New York ever again. Okay? What he can do afterwards, I don't even know if there is legalities that he can have charges brought up against him. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not part of that. I'm not even necessarily calling for that. I'm just saying I don't know. But what I am saying is that this gentleman should not have control or the ability to run this state after this mistake. He needs to own up to it and face the consequences that come with it politically. I mean, anything that happens with this afterwards has to be done. He needs, if he is a leader in which he claims himself to be, and he's got a book that does it, all right, he needs to own up to his mistake. Bottom line.
Yeah.
Take the consequences, and run with it and move on and leave your position. That is the right thing to do.
And I'll leave you with this because, his whole thing is he's blaming the federal government. Trump was not perfect during this whole thing. He made a lot of mistakes, and no one is excusing him of it. I mean, no one would ever let him get away with anything anyway. But he made a lot of mistakes. But the one thing he maintained through this whole thing was that he was going to allow the states to make the final decisions on their states based on what they thought was the right thing to do. Okay?
That sounds like a true federalist to me.
You want to call him a dictator? Your argument ends there because you have no idea what you're talking about. The Constitution, the American Revolution, was fought. Constitution was created strictly because they did not want a centralized government. The powers are delegated to the states. The federal government is just there as basically a backup, right? That's what they're there for.
The whole vaccine rollout.
Right. The states are delegated the powers. So you cannot sit there and say that we live in America, that you're following the Constitution, that you believe in the founding fathers, and then turn around and complain that the federal government is at fault because your rollout plan failed. Okay?
The best line.
You are delegated to run your state. You had 9 months to come up with something. And instead, you sat on your ass. You did these other stupid things that you could have waited for, because last I heard, you don't write a book about your leadership on a pandemic until the pandemic is over. We're still here, aren't we? And yet he's already wrote a book. I'm sure he's in the fucking process of writing a second book.
Yeah, the revised version.
I'm sure there's a movie being written about it. I can't wait.
He's probably casting. He's probably casting right now.
Honestly, I would not put it past Hollywood to be writing a movie on this shit. And that's where we are. You need to remember where this country was founded on, and that is that the states have the power to run their states based on facts.
The best lines are, "We can't move forward. We're in deep debt. We're severely in trouble unless the federal government gives us more money." That's the best. That's one of his best lines.
Yeah.
That was the best lines of the last 4 years. We need more funding from the federal government. Well, why do you need more funding from the federal government? Why does the federal government need?
How does a state with the highest fucking taxes, the highest taxes, most regulations, the worst state to own a business in, how the hell is it that you consistently have a budget deficit every single year and you beg the federal government to bail you out? How is that possible?
People, that is, in my opinion, poor leadership. Cuomo, you need to own up to your mistakes, and you need to face the consequences. And I, for one, will not be reading his book on leadership.
I wouldn't wipe my ass with the pages of his book if I ran out of toilet paper.
And on that note, see you next time. I'm Chris.
And I'm Chris.
And this is where we drop the mic.